Guys, and welcome to my first episode of Find Your Mojo with Mercy Tiara. In this series of videos, I'm going to be helping you guys overcome any creative slumps that you might be in or any scrappy blocks that you might be having, and help you get out of your scrapbooking slump and find your creative mojo again. So our first prompt in this series is to start small. Sometimes a 12 by 12 page can be rather overwhelming and it can be hard to know where to start. So I'm going to challenge you guys to start with just a small piece of cardstock or pattern paper and then build from there. So in this case, I'm starting with a 4 by 6 piece of pattern paper from the On Trend collection from my mind's eye, and I am going to be scrapbooking an entire 12 by 12 page, but I'm going to focus at the beginning just on using that 4 by 6 card. So the prompt here to get you started is to just focus on embellishing a 4 by 6 card. Sometimes just focusing on such a small space can really help you get into the groove of scrapbooking. So if you start with a 4 by 6 card and only focus on decorating that one 4 by 6 card, it can help you loosen up a little bit and find some of that creative energy that you need to get through a 12 by 12 page. And what sometimes happens is that 4 by 6 card can become a springboard to an entire 12 by 12 layout. So check out this process video that follows, where I'm going to start small and focus entirely on just decorating a 4 by 6 card. I'm not going to think about how it relates to my story or where my journaling might go or where my photos are going to go. I'm only going to focus on just that 4 by 6 card. And then once the 4 by 6 card is completed, and then I'm going to figure out how I'm going to use that 4 by 6 card on my layout. And in the worst case scenario, I won't be able to use it on a layout and it'll just be something that gets my creative juices flowing, but maybe it'll become the basis for an entire 12 by 12 layout that I can then build around that 4 by 6 card. So stay tuned to see how it turns out. So I'm starting this layout with these two Instagram photos, which are printed to 2.8 by 2.8, and I printed them so small because they were taken in a restaurant and under really low light conditions, and so they're quite grainy. I have the On Trend 2 collection from my mind's eye here, and I'm just having a look at some of the pattern papers. I want to cut myself a 4 by 6 piece of pattern paper, which is where I will be starting my entire design from. So I decided to start, initially I was going to use this triangle pattern. I love this pattern, and I thought about maybe starting by matting it. Again, I'm trying to start entirely from this tiny little piece of paper. This 4 by 6 piece of paper is going to be the spring board for the whole rest of the layout. So I'm starting by having a look at the die cut pieces. Now I know there are some cacti in here, or some succulents, and I want to put succulents on this one. I want to put cacti on it because it's a picture of my husband, and I often tease him about his stubble, and so the cacti just kind of remind me of him. And when I saw them, I thought I want to do a layout about Scott with these cacti. So you'll notice that the cacti that are on the sticker sheet are quite a bit smaller than the cacti in the die cut set, and I really want them to be big. I want them to be the main, I guess, decoration on this layout. So I'm going to go with the die cut ones, even though there's only 2 of them. So I feel like I need a third image, so I'm just grabbing this die cut heart that also came in the package. I love the foil on it. I really love that pattern, actually, that dark bluish black heart with the foil on it. There's an entire paper with that pattern in it in this collection kit, and I love it. So again, I'm playing around with the idea of matting this on another piece of pattern paper. I did end up flipping around the piece that I'm using. Instead of using the triangles, I'm going to use this, the other side of it, which has the coral orange on the bottom and then a diagonal line, and the lime green, or I guess it's more of a mint green, it's not really lime, on the top. So I'm going to just use my adhesive to attach that piece of paper to the triangle paper and cut a mat for it with my trimmer. And now I'm going to layer these together. Before I do that, I'm going to outline them. I do like to outline the majority of the items that I put on a layout. I find that it helps bring together different patterns, and it also creates a little bit of contrast between similar papers. And what I'm doing here is I outlined it with my Pitt pen, which is from Faber-Castell, but then the pen doesn't stick to the gold foil parts. So I just went back with a slick surface marker, and I used the Lumo Color by Stettler for the slick surfaces. There, I'm using it right now on this gold foil part of this die cut. And then I just use my Faber-Castell for outlining the rest of it. If I were to use my slick surface marker on the entire die cut, it bleeds too much into the paper and results in a really wide thick line, and it's a little bit messy and difficult to control. So I only use the Lumo Color on the slick surfaces. So I'm just continuing my outlining around the succulent, and then I'm also going to outline the flower. And I just like the boldness that adds. I mean, you don't have to outline your papers and your die cuts, but since I had outlined my papers, I just felt like outlining the die cuts would just give them a little bit more oomph, make them stand out a little bit more, and give them a bit more of a bold look, I guess. So this is pretty much the design I'm going to use for this card. These two succulents layered with one another, and then the heart behind it. I used some Stampin' Up! Dimensional adhesive on the front succulent and just on the tip of the second succulent. And I knew right where I wanted that heart to go, and I didn't want to forget, so I just pulled it up. And I'm just mentioning here that I'd like the succulents to be mostly vertical, mostly upright. I have the heart tilted, and then there's that diagonal line in the back, and I don't want there to be too many lines going on. I don't want too many things to be off kilter. So the heart is enough, and I tried to keep the succulents not absolutely perfectly straight, but just not on too much of a wonky angle either. I find that if I have too many things and they're all at wonky angles, then it just gives too much of a disorganized, scattered look to the cluster. So I tried to be, I guess, conservative with how many things I set off to a wonky angle. So again, I'm outlining this tag as well, or I guess it's a tab, not a tag. And I'm just outlining the side that will show. There's no point in outlining another side. And you saw that I had my phone out there. I'm just looking up the date of the photo, and I can easily find that on Instagram as well as on my camera roll. And I'm using just a regular office date stamp, and I'm using Stampin' Up! Basic Gray ink, and I do need to re-ink that pad. It usually does stamp a little bit darker than that, but I love to use the Basic Gray ink by Stampin' Up! For my roller date stamps because it gives a much softer, more subtle look than my black ink pads. I find that sometimes my black ink pads make the date stand out too much. And I just like it to blend in and be a soft, subtle accent as opposed to being the dominant thing in an area. And so I love this tag, or not this tag, I love this sticker. And it's on a little banner, and it has this really cute gold accent that says Happy Day. But I wanted everything, a lot of the other things, not everything, but a lot of the other elements have white halos around them. So I've decided to mat this on a piece of cardstock, and I cut it a little bit too big. I tried to fix it with my trimmer. That's my Creative Memories guillotine trimmer. And I tried to fix it, but I couldn't. So I just did so with my scissors to cut it down a tiny bit more than what I did the first time. And that allows that piece of, I guess that sticker to blend in with the other elements that are layered around it. I put more Stampin' Dimensionals on either side of that little banner, and then just regular adhesive down the middle. So now I'm deciding that that banner has some, some blank space on it that I'd like to put some some decorations on. So I have these brads, and rather than trying to poke a hole through all of those layers, everything is already adhered. I keep a set of wire cutters in my scrapbooking tool caddy, and I do this with brads. If I don't want to poke a hole on something, I just cut the little ends off of it. See how I did that there? I tried to cut them off in one at once, but I had to kind of pull them out and cut each of the prongs individually. And I'm just mentioning there that I want those diagonal stripes to follow the same line as the diagonal line that's already on the layout. So that would be that background paper that has the coral and the green. So I'm placing that one such that the diagonal, that brad that is, such that the diagonal is the same as the other diagonal. And then I just grabbed one of the tinier brads. So whenever I'm pairing brads, I like to do two that are different sizes, different colors, and different patterns. And I really like to have one be a pattern and one be a solid if I'm clustering two together. And in such a tiny place, I only need two. I'm not going to go ahead and put three of them on there. It's okay because it's okay that I don't have sets of three. I know usually from a design perspective, we like to use odd numbers, but you can think about this as a date night. It was just the two of us, so we've got two cacti and two brads, and it's okay. Sometimes you can break those design rules if it makes good sense for your layout. This is only a small space that I'm decorating, so I don't think I would have been able to fit a third succulent on there even if I had a third one. So there we go. I just did the same thing with the second brad, and I think that looks really cute. So now I have my 4x6 element pretty much ready to go. Oh, one more detail. I'm going to put a wood veneer heart. And these wood veneers are stuck to the piece of cardboard with these really large glue dots that stick out. And that's actually not what you're supposed to adhere it to your project with. They actually have adhesive backing on them. So I went to my sewing machine and added some stitching before I added that wood veneer heart. I added some vertical stitching right along where the tab is, and then also in a pattern of just a pattern of straight lines at the top as well. And that just fills in some of that empty space there that is not going to have any embellishment on it and adds a tiny bit of interest to that top part of the card. Makes it look a little bit less blank and empty and maybe forgotten. And so, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Oh yes, so now I'm thinking about how my photos are going to go. And I'm thinking I'll stack them one on top of another and put them right beside this, this embellishment cluster on the 4x6 card. So now I was just showing you there how you can peel off the adhesive backing off the back of those wood veneers, so you don't need to use any adhesive at all, and you also don't need to use the glue dots that they're stuck to the card with. So I really love how that 4x6 card is looking right now, and so I'm going to move on and start thinking about my photos and how they're going to go right alongside that 4x6 card. So this I thought about using some blue cardstock from my stash, but it was absolutely the wrong color. So I went to my scraps and grabbed this piece of black, but it's kind of a smoky black. I guess it's probably technically a gray. And I like how it's sort of washed out, which some of the colors in this kit have that kind of washed look. So I think that looks nice. And I left just the tiniest little bit of that black showing, and it's a very subtle detail, but I really love to matte my photos. I like to leave the little white border all the way around them, and I like to have a very, very fine black or dark blue or just very dark border. So you saw me put some Stampin' Dimensionals on over on the right hand side of that photo because I'm going to layer it with the 4x6 piece, and there's the 4x6 piece holds it up a little bit, and so I need the other side to just be balanced so that the whole thing will lie flat. Now I've decided to use this piece of pattern paper. This is where I take my 4x6 inspirational piece, which I scrapped to get me started, and now I'm going to start to expand it into a full 12x12 layout. So I have that coral dotted pattern paper, and I want something bold to go with it. And wow, I love that diagonal stripe. And it's very bold, and I think that it takes these floral, soft, delicate patterns, and it adds a boldness to it that isn't there otherwise. And especially because this is a layout that features my husband, I don't want it to be too soft and feminine. And without that bold stripe, this whole cluster of pieces that I have end up having a very soft, feminine feel to them. So this just kind of bolds it up a little bit, and I really like it. I love a bold diagonal stripe. It's one of my very favorite things. So now I'm thinking about what I'm going to use for my background, and that's quite a bold background, and I think that works, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I'm going to use this as my background pattern instead, and it just softens it up a little bit, and what I really like about using a soft background is that it really allows that bold black and white diagonal stripe to really pop out. And basically all the other colors on this layout are quite a bit more rich than the background, and the background just kind of fades away, and you get to everything else kind of pops up and moves towards your eye. Like, it just kind of helps everything to stand out. I really like how it looks with that background. So now these are the rub-ons from the On Trend collection, and I will encourage you to use your rub-ons as, quickly. So don't hoard them, and don't keep them in your stash for too long. Some rub-ons will survive the test of time, but many rub-ons will not. And so if you leave them in your stash too long, you run the risk of taking them out and trying to use them, and they become brittle and fall apart and don't stick properly. So I will encourage you to use them right away when you get them. So all that you have to do if you haven't used rub-ons before is just use the little popsicle stick that comes in the package and just rub them on, and then just gently peel the little plastic coating piece off. And I like to do that quite slowly, just in case there's a piece that isn't stuck to your paper, and that way you can reposition that plastic paper, rub again, and not ruin your rub-on. So I put 3 hearts so that they look like they're sort of coming out around the large heart, and then the word happy, and now I'm putting the word lovely down here, which is just a very subtle, it's kind of like a tone-on-tone look here. It picks up on the pinkish color that's in the planter of one of the succulents, and it just fills that space a little bit. Now I'm outlining my papers, and you will notice that when I outline, I'm moving my whole entire arm. It's important that you don't move your wrist, because you'll end up with curvy lines if you move your wrist. So I keep my wrist very straight and stiff, and use long sweeps to outline. You'll see me do it again when I outline this paper. And sorry, I forgot to zoom out here. There we go. That's better. And so now all of my papers are outlined, except for that background one. I will get to outlining that one. Another tip I have for outlining is to make sure that you use a piece of scrap paper underneath of your outlining, and try to do your outlining before you glue things down, because that will allow you to outline more confidently, and then your lines won't be so wobbly. Basically, if you're hesitant or unsure about your outlining, you will have less of a nice outcome. So you always want to kind of increase your chances of it working out. So now I have put my photo in place, my stacked photos, and I was kind of trying to make it so that the layers on the top looked good. The layers on the bottom don't look all that great. What I'm doing here is I'm just placing a couple of enamel dots in the cacti just to add a little bit of visual interest to them. Now I'm going to glue this striped paper in place. And so I was paying attention to how the photo and the pattern paper lined up on the top, because I couldn't get it so that it looked good both on the top and on the bottom. I'm going to show you the problem with the bottom in just a few minutes. And so I just focused on getting it right on the top, and then I'll work around it not being right on the bottom. So the problem on the bottom there is that the photos end at exactly the same place as the cactus that is in the orange planter. And I don't like that. You might not notice it and it might not make a big difference, but for me, it makes a difference. So I notice it, and that's reason enough for me to want to address it in some way. But that doesn't mean that I have to pull everything apart and start all over again. I'm taking this gorgeous, gorgeous acrylic shape from the collection and putting the word smile on that photo. And oh, I love those acrylic pieces. They're just so beautiful. They're my very favorite thing in the collection. In fact, they could be my very favorite thing right now. I just love them. I wish I had a million of them. They're so beautiful. I'm thinking about using, I want to kind of put something over to the left, and I'm thinking my title will go there, be to the left of the journaling strips, but I'm thinking about maybe using some more of those acrylic shapes, and I'm just kind of toying with the idea of using a flare badge, but that kind of throws the balance off of this layout, so I didn't want to do that. And I'm just thinking here about what else I might want to use. So I'm going to go ahead, get the glue dot off the back of that, and use one of those little wood veneer pieces. Well, not that one, but just the little one. There we go. I kind of like how that looks. And I'm going to put another little enamel dot right on the edge of that. And I'm doing that now while I think of it, so I don't forget to do it later. I've been on a trend of forgetting some of the final details that I like to do, so I'm a little worried that I'm going to forget things. I don't know what that's all about. So I just added some adhesive to the back of my layers, and I placed them around the middle. I'm not usually too careful about it. Now I'm going to put my journaling, I'm going to pop it up, so I'm going to end up using a lot of these Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. And because the first one is layered over a couple of things that also pop up, I just used some regular adhesive on part of it and put pop dots on the edges. And those are of course Stampin' Up! Dimensional adhesive. I just sometimes use the word pop dots as a generic term, but those are not Pop Dot brand, they're Stampin' Up!, which are my very, very favorite dimensional adhesive ever. I love them. And I have a whole video about it on my channel if you want to hear a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of my thoughts on dimensional adhesive. So I'm just placing those in such a way that they are going to support these journal strips. And the nice thing about the Stampin' Up! Dimensionals is that you can cut the edge. It has like a little trim along the edge of the sheet of dimensional adhesive, and you can cut the little tiny thin ones into little pieces. Like you can cut the edge into little pieces, and then it gives you little half hexagons that you can use. Oh, there's another kitty showing up. And that allows you to use the dimensional adhesive fairly easily on thinner areas. So the other thing that I'm doing is I'm not taking off the backing off of all of those pieces of dimensional adhesive, because I really don't need it for adhesive as much as I need it to hold the space. So I'm just taking the backings off of the either end, like the very last ones, and one in the middle, so that it makes it a little bit easier for it to place. And it's also just kind of more time efficient for me to not have to worry about peeling off the little backing on all those pieces, especially where I'm using so many pieces of adhesive in such a small area. I don't really want to have to bother with peeling them all off. And so I actually ran out of the edging because I had used so many pieces of it on these journaling strips. So this is just showing you what I do is I just kind of cut into the edging, and that gives me these little half hexagons that I can use. And I put that one a little bit close to the one above it, so I'm going to move it down a little bit so that it's more evenly spaced compared to the other ones. And then I just pulled the adhesive backing off of that wood veneer piece and placed it, and this is looking pretty good. I'm thinking about using those acrylic pieces. I just love them so much. I'm thinking, oh, I wish I could get another one on there. But the nice thing about using one of something is that it really helps it to stand out. So I accidentally didn't turn on my camera when I put out the thickers that spell out Our Place. It's a cursive font. It's a black foam letter sticker by Dear Lizzie, and it is called Charm. And so I placed those charm letter stickers right alongside my journaling over to the left, and that's the only thing that you guys missed. I'm sorry about that. And now I'm just putting some more of those Stampin' Dimensionals behind some other pieces that I want to make sure that they, maintain their height. And now I thought I was done, so I'm showing you the close-ups. And then I came back and decided to add something, and it would be fine just the way it is. It has a real clean and simple look right now, but I decided that it was just kind of missing a little je ne sais quoi. So I decided to go into my doily stash, and you'll notice that there are a couple of different shades of gold when you have gold things in your stash. And I chose the lighter color, like the more pale version of gold, as opposed to the really bright yellow gold doilies, because the color that I chose was more consistent with the gold that was already on the layout. So I didn't want the doily to really be harsh and really grab your attention. I wanted it to blend in with the elements that were already on the page. So that's why I chose the paler of the two different shades that I have. Then I decided, of course, it was feeling a little bit unbalanced. So I decided to place a die cut heart there, and I did outline it before I put it on so that it would look the same as the other die cuts that are already on the page. And then this time, because I didn't already have it attached to other things, I was able to use the brad as it's intended. So I just poked a hole and attached that onto the die cut right on the edge of the heart. I like to put embellishments on the edges of things. That's my favorite place. And I am adding a little green flag, and that picks up on the green that's elsewhere on the layout, and just sticking it behind the heart-shaped die cut, or the heart die cut. And I like how that little cluster looks. It just balances out there was so much embellishment on the other side and then nothing over here. I just decided to beef it up a little bit. Then while I was at it, I had my supplies out, so I decided to add some chevrons in front of the title. And I like putting arrows or chevrons that point to my title. It's just something that I like to do with my pages, and so it fills up that space because I have Our Place is aligned to the right, and it leaves a little space in front of the O. And so these chevron pieces just fill in that space quite nicely. And one of the stickers, I actually did a bad job of outlining it, so there was another one of the same sticker, so I just re-outlined it and did a little switcheroo there at the end, and that looks a little bit better. My kitty's saying hello again. And now I'm thinking, I really like how it's, there's basically embellishments sticking out of the left and of the right, and I like how that looks, and my cat is very curious about what it is I'm doing. I had to go grab my Heidi Swap Gold Color Shine, which is a ink mist that you can use, and I'm just going to mask off most of my layout because I want the gold splatters to land on either side behind the embellishments. So I'm just flicking the nozzle and allowing drips to land in those two areas. And I'm just masking off with some things that were already, this is a giant cake box that I use. It was from a grocery store, one of those big giant sheet cakes. And I just hung on to it. It surprisingly didn't get any frosting on it at all, so I just kept it. So here is what the layout looks like up close. And the funny thing about this layout is that even though it started with a 4x6 card, the card almost disappears once you put everything else together on the layout, and you totally can't tell that this layout began as just a 4x6 card. So if you've lost your mojo and you're not sure where to start scrapbooking, I would encourage you to start small and just don't even think about filling a 12 by 12 page or how you're going to come up with an overall design, and just start by putting some pretty things on a 4x6 card or whatever size card you feel comfortable with, and then just build from there. And you might be surprised at where that kind of an approach might lead you. So if you use this approach to reclaim your scrappy mojo and get yourself scrapbooking out of a rut, I would love to see how it turns out. So please share your layouts with me. Tag me on social media. I'd love to see your layouts that started small and see how they end up as a 12 by 12 or an 8.5 by 11 or a pocket page or whatever it is you're working on. So thanks so much for joining me today, and have a really great scrappy week.